Let's break it down. A single factory closure in Germany is telling us something big about Europe's future and China's growing power over it. I'm Imran, a Middle East-based analyst who follows global economics, energy, and geopolitics. In about 3.5 minutes, let's walk through how Europe's industrial backbone is cracking and why so much of the leverage is shifting to Beijing. And as we go, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share so we can keep breaking this down together every day. First, the symbol of the shift, BASF. BASF is not some small local plant. It's one of the world's biggest chemical companies, and its Ludwigshafen site in Germany has been running since the 1800s. Over the last 2 years, BASF has shut one of its major ammonia plants there and related fertilizer facilities, cutting hundreds of jobs, with thousands more reductions across the group. And the official reason is simple: energy costs. Ammonia and fertilizer are incredibly energy intensive. Before the Ukraine war, European gas for industry was often in the 20-30 euro per megawatt hour range. After Europe cut itself off from cheap Russian pipeline gas and switched to imported LNG, wholesale prices spiked, and even after the crisis peak, they've settled into a new normal that's roughly double pre-war levels and far more volatile. At those prices, running heavy chemical assets in Germany just doesn't add up. So, BASF isn't just turning down the dial, it's moving capacity to places like China, where energy is cheaper and policy support is strong. Once those plants and engineers move, that know-how doesn't simply come back to Europe. And it's not just chemicals. Industry groups say around 70% of European ammonia capacity was curtailed during the gas shock. Smelters, glass, steel, fertilizer, anything that drinks electricity or gas has been under pressure. This is what deindustrialization looks like in real time, not in textbooks. Second, Europe isn't just losing on costs, it's getting outrun by Chinese competition. Look at electric cars. Chinese brands had almost no presence in Europe a few years ago. Now they're taking a fast-growing share of the EV market, helped by cheaper batteries, massive scale at home, and state-backed supply chains. Recent data puts Chinese brands at high single-digit shares of EU battery EV sales, with some models undercutting European rivals by thousands of euros even after EU tariffs. At the same time, legacy players like Volkswagen are openly discussing closing plants in Germany and restructuring their European footprint. The jobs, the investment, the R&D, increasingly being pulled toward where the growth is, and that's China and other low-cost regions, then go up the value chain. In solar panels, over 95% of modules installed in Europe are imported from China because Chinese firms dominate almost every step of the PV supply chain and can produce at prices European factories simply can't match. In batteries, China controls something like 3/4 of global lithium-ion manufacturing capacity, plus big chunks of the cathode and anode supply chain. That means if Europe wants to build EVs, storage, or grid-scale batteries, it is heavily dependent on Chinese technology and Chinese factories. Add on top of that the critical minerals picture. For rare earths and key inputs like gallium, germanium, and graphite, essential for chips, power electronics, and batteries, China dominates refining and has already used export restrictions as a political signal. So Europe isn't just buying finished Chinese products, it's relying on Chinese-controlled supply chains to build its own green transition. Third, this is where the leverage flips. If you're a big European manufacturer, you now need the Chinese market to survive. Automakers sell more cars in China than at home. Industrial companies need Chinese demand to spread their fixed costs, but China typically demands joint ventures, local investment, and technology transfer in exchange for that access. Over time, that means European firms are training their own competitors, sharing know-how to gain market share today and seeding future Chinese rivals tomorrow. At the same time, Europe has limited room to fight back. It can raise tariffs on Chinese EVs and solar panels, but if Chinese products remain cheaper even after tariffs, consumers still buy them. It can try to rebuild local supply chains, but those projects require cheap energy, patient capital, and political stability. 3 things Europe doesn't have in abundance right now. And demographically, Europe is aging. Its workforce is shrinking, while pension and healthcare costs rise. That puts pressure on public finances, just as governments are being asked to subsidize new factories and strategic industries. So let's break it down one last time. High and volatile energy prices have punched a hole in Europe's traditional industrial model, forcing energy-intensive production to shut down or move abroad. Chinese firms now dominate many of the future-defining industries: EVs, batteries, solar, critical materials, and are rapidly gaining ground in Europe's own market. European companies are increasingly dependent on Chinese customers, Chinese supply chains, and Chinese policy decisions to stay alive. That's how you slide from strategic autonomy into strategic dependence. Not through a single dramatic event, but through 1,000 boardroom decisions to relocate plants, sign joint ventures, and buy the cheaper Chinese component just this once. If you want more clear, no-nonsense breakdowns like this on Europe, China, and the global economy, hit subscribe, tap like, and share this with a friend who keeps asking what's really happening to Europe's industry. I'm Imran. This is Imran Breaks It Down, and we'll keep breaking it down together.